name Mana, Tamate. I know almost everybody here in the room. And I'm from the Ahupua'a of Kahuku, Moku of Ka'u, Moku Puni, Moku Okeawe. So I live in Kahuku on Ka'u, the big island, island of Hawaii, the most southern part of the United States. Do you need to smell or are you going to wait? And I've been working on the Ahamoku system, Ahupua'a system, for about close to 30 years now. But it was only in the last about 7 or 8 years that it really started going because the people started to pull it all together. In the room today, in fact, there's some of the people that wrote the original act, the original bill, and actually got it going. And if you remember back in about 10, 15 years ago, the state policies were that they didn't acknowledge the Hawaiian people. They really didn't. And what we had to do is learn their methods, use their terms to get things the way the Hawaiians needed to get them. So it was learning their system and becoming better at it, which is actually what we did. And it took 8 islands, and it took a lot of effort. This whole system is a Native Hawaiian traditional methodology on natural and cultural resources. Hi, come in. So in the room today, we have a couple of people that were there from the very beginning in 2005. And in 2005, DLNR was starting to put together marine protected areas in the ocean in the fishing koa on each island. So the kupuna came forward and said, they're taking all of our land, they're taking all of our oceans. The only way that we could even get a voice heard was through the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs at that time. I'd like to introduce Tony Lee. Tony, since in Vala'au. Tony Lee was the president, I think only the second president in the history of the Hawaiian Civic Clubs, right? Second woman president. And this is geared about the power of women. She made it possible to take the Ahamoku concept through the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs to get as a vehicle to the legislature. Do you want to just, yes, I mean, it was a huge step. So,
well, as Lemana said, you know, we all know we're all Hawaiians. Yeah, everybody in here Hawaiian. We're having to really leverage and fight for every single thing that we have. We were not even, well, we're still not recognized as a people, yeah. But slowly but surely we could see that all of our rights were being taken as far as the ocean. DLNR was looking at closing down fishing in Hawaii completely. The environmentalists were all behind that because of the whole northwestern Hawaiian Islands becoming a monument. They wanted to make Hawaii like a aquarium where you look at the fish and you're not going to catch it and eat it. Well, we as a people of Hawaii, not necessarily just Hawaiians, but all the people of Hawaii look to the ocean as our refrigerators, yeah? Because when we want to eat fish, we're going to go catch the fish and then bring it home to our table. So we could see that danger coming down the pike of closing down fishing. I don't know if you know, but Puerto Rico is not allowed to fish. Yeah, they cannot fish. So what they said was to us, well, don't worry about it, Hawaii, it's okay, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring you fish. We'll go catch it from someplace else and we'll bring it to you. But we all know that our fish tastes different. The fish in Hawaii tastes different than the fish caught on the West Coast, on the East Coast, or anywhere else because of what they eat. So that's why it's different. We don't want to eat somebody else's fish, number one. And number two, that harms their ecosystem of catching their fish and feeding them to us. That's not good, for the environment either. So we thought, well, we better step up to the plate as Hawaiians and make our voice be heard. Just so happened, I just happened to be the president of the association at that time. And it actually started when I was first vice president. And we knew the urgency, and so we continued to press forward. And we had many, many meetings in the community, brought all the fishermen out. And we thought to ourselves, we have to do an educational process for our people as well. Because if people don't know this is happening, and many don't if they're not involved, then it will all happen. And then after it happens, and they say, well, nobody told us. Yeah. So one of the first things we did in regards to that also, to make that awareness of fishing, was to have a fishing festival. And that's at Pier 38, and now it's held every single year. I believe it's on its 4th or 5th year. And like anything else, when anything happens in Hawaii, they think it starts small. And then nobody wants to get involved in it until it gets bigger. So we planned the first one, and the first fishing festival that we had, opened it up to the public. It was 16,000 people that came to that festival. And it's climbed ever since. It's just grown. But we succeeded in teaching the people the urgency, taking care of the ocean, taking care of our kuleana in regards to everything around us. And it doesn't only start from the ocean, it starts from the mountain to the sea. So the people became very maka'ala and wanted to do this. Also in regards to this movement, we started a hapua'a system about ocean to the sea and taking care and teaching our public, our people in our communities about taking care of all of these areas. Because we all know the DLNR cannot do the work because they don't have enough people. They really just don't have enough people to do that. But if we all did the kuleana and took care of our own place, it would make it easier, yeah? And then our environment would be better. And so children like her, taught at this age to take on a kuleana of what's around them, will make Hawaii a better place. And that's how really it all started. So I consider myself fortunate to be able to have been a part of that. And we're so happy it took us so many, many years to get the state to recognize us and for the governor to sign it. It was like pulling teeth. And so, but we did it because we prevailed. And it was mostly women that pushed. So,
in fact, the ones that pushed the hardest were the women. It was the women that stayed with it. Well, I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't the men. They were important too, but it was the women that stuck with it and saw the importance of this. I'd like to also introduce Pi'ilani Ka'avaloa. Pi'ilani is one of our strongest Moku people from Moku Okeawe, island of Hawaii. She's taken the leadership role on that island for the past 7 years at the request specifically of the people of the different Moku on that island. So she's brought that forward. I'd like to also introduce Ululani Bernie in the back. Ulu takes care of the Ko'olauloa side of Oahu. She also has taken a very strong role in pulling the people together on the windward side of Oahu, and not only in the fishing, but also in the land of the island. I'd like to introduce Ruby Kwanakea. She's been with us from the very beginning, like 2005 or so, has gone to every single puvalo, as have all of the women here that I've introduced. There have been 7 so far in the past 7 years. The first one was the hardest and the most important one. And that's because we brought Mo'opuna and Native Hawaiian resource managers from every single island to Puvalu to find out what are we gonna do, how are we gonna do it, how are we gonna protect our resources, land and ocean, for our people, how are we gonna keep it sacred and safe so that our own Mo'opuna's Mo'opuna will be able to enjoy what we're enjoying. And I'm gonna let P. Lenny talk a little bit about that because she was one of the people that were the model. We needed her because we didn't speak, we didn't olelo, she did. And many of the people that came to Kupuna were not comfortable speaking in any other language but our own Hawaiian language. And so to facilitate a gathering of over, I think we had over 100 people, yeah?
I think it was more than that.
Way more than that, yeah. Yeah, it was about way more than that.
The very first Kuva.
The first one,
Yeah.
the most important one because
Yeah.
that is where the focus, where everybody came together.
Mhm.
And the one thing we didn't anticipate, but what was happening, is that the islands sat by themselves in sections, and there was no trust. Yeah, there was no trust because it's, well, I'm not gonna tell you my secrets about my fishing areas or my, mountain areas. I mean, there was no trust, there was no feeling of unity. Go ahead, you can tell because she was one of the moderators.
Yeah. I am just so humbled to be here, first of all. And I want to mahala Auntie Tony because she really directed me to Leimana. And Leimana them came around in our communities. We had a meeting. And she came and she said, we need kokua. I'm just going around informing people about this movement that we want to try and bring back indigenous resource management. How can we return to traditional practices, and not necessarily traditional practices in which we go back and we make our own Senate kind fish traps, but the practices that sustained our people, sustained our ocean, our land. And so she was looking, her and Uncle Bobby were looking for being able to identify fishermen and farmers. And so I got an email from Auntie Tony saying that these people were going around, and so they came, and then, so I met with Leimana, and she brought this prophecy. And I was so moved because I too heard about this prophecy, that all of our people will come together, but it has to happen. And the first thing that's gonna happen is we're gonna fight. It's gonna be a battle, but we're gonna overcome. And once this happens, our people going to be able to survive again. And so when I heard that, I was so moved, and so I said, I'm on board and I'm gonna help. So when that first Puvalu happened, like Leimana said, we were all in our islands, and we came with eha, we came with hurt, we came with questions, we came with burdens, we came with so much, a lot of stuff. And all of these things was for our own islands. It wasn't for the people of Hawaii. It wasn't for everybody. It was just for our own individual islands. And when that happened, we started voicing our concerns, and we were thinking, okay, this wasn't how we were looking at it. We were looking at it as, okay, everybody can come and share. But the concerns that they shared changed the mana'o and the kuleana, the responsibility of what was needed to happen in order for us to move forward. And so I heard a voice, and I never know what I was doing. I just drew a blank, and I just said, Olelo. And everybody, you know, found that what I said was what everybody was looking for, was the answer. And so then we divided into different groups, and we gave everybody paper, and we said, write down your concerns, write down the pilikias that we have, and don't only write those pilikias, but give solutions. What do you want to see? And that puvalu was so short, you know, it wasn't enough time, and so we said,
It was what?
everybody,
It was 2 days, I think.
Yeah.
It was only 2 days.
2 days, and so everybody was like, okay. So after we had done this, we'd bring everybody back into the main room, and we'd post up everybody's concerns for each island. And we found that we had a lot of similarities, and there were certain concerns and problems, and you know, and the thing about it is we, you know, after that moment, we said no more of the organizations. You know, you cannot have organization. You know, coming as the ohana, we come in as the people. Then after we had gathered all that mana'o, then we went back out, and then we had the other puvalu, and then the other puvalu was when we brought all the
Right, but before
art
we did that,
organizations.
what I found, the one thing that gelled us all together
Yeah.
is that night, after the first night, everybody started to kanikapila and inu, and but it was the music. Different islands brought different kind of implements.
Sharing and
It was sharing, and then we all find out that, well, I'm related to you, or I'm related to
Yeah.
you. You know, there was a common bond that we found
yeah.
that night. So when we went back the next day, that was the beginning of the
And
foundation.
then all the kupuna said that they wanted to have another one, another puvalu, and to focus on these different issues that we're bringing forth and what could be remedied from that.
So that from that first one, we all developed, all the islands together developed a resolution. The resolution called for unity and to share. Then we realized two problems, two things. We didn't want this to go nowhere.
Right.
So the second puvalu was geared towards education. How are we gonna get the knowledge from the kupuna to the keiki so that it perpetuates? And what kind of knowledge are we going to give them? The things that our kupuna and ka'u would be able to teach our people about our aina is not gonna do anybody in Kauai any good. So we realized collectively, the group, that in order for something like this to work, it had to be site specific. It had to be ahupua'a, moku, then mokupuni. People had to matter. And the people from the ahupua'a were the ones that had the knowledge of that specific aina. I mean, in ka'u, it's just pali. It's not gonna help anybody on Oahu or Maui, because each island is so different. So once we got that puvalu done, and the Kamehameha Schools was instrumental in helping with that, they actually created the curriculum, that puvalu, on how to do this, and Kamehameha Schools initiated it into their schools. Some of the charter schools did as well. I know Molokai they did.
Yeah.
Yeah? Our island they did.
Did.
But then, what do? You know, I mean, we knew it had to go farther. So the third puvalu, we invited all the policymakers, we invited all of the legislators, all of the state and federal and county agencies, and they all came. They all came. And all of all policymakers. And their recommendation is that this should become a law. This will protect the Hawaiian people place. And that's what we've been working for all this time. So in 2007, it actually became a law. It was Act 212. It didn't go far enough. So as we moved along, you know, it's been a struggle because of the politics involved. No funding, there was never any funding. OHA helped as much as they could. Kamehameha Schools helped. The Western Pacific Fishery Management Council was a very strong sponsor. They helped because they saw the importance for a holistic ecosystem. They helped them with their Magnuson Act. And with all of those steps coming forward, we come to where we are today. But throughout the past 5 years, the women of these Moku were the ones that kept it going. There are countless meetings in the communities, public meetings, public gatherings, ohana gatherings, where they would talk about this to get it going. And they finally wrote the bill. So the bill that was passed was written by the people. Specifically, Auntie Ruby had a hand in it, Tony, Pi'ilani, Ulu, they all wrote it together. I mean, we all wrote it. And that's the bill that passed. So this presentation is on the system and where it's going. So you know the background of how it originated. Now we can see where it's going. So people usually ask, what is the Ahamoku system? When we all gathered together, it was the kupuna from Molokai that came forward and has continued to practice this natural resource management system dating from the 9th century. Now, before the Tahitians got here, this is a system that all the people in all the islands practiced. It was sustainability. It was based on sustainability. And it focuses on the geography of the Ahupua'a on site-specific. You know, that's why you have boundaries, Ahupua'a boundaries, because it's the resource that is being protected. So the other really important thing on this is that you have to have empirical knowledge, generational knowledge of that specific resource. Not only the ocean, but the land, the watersheds, even the sky, you know, how much moisture comes down. All of that is involved in this. Stop me, you know, if you have questions. And PE and Ulu, you know, if you guys want to, Tony and Ruby, if you want to add, they were as much a part of this as I was. I mean, we were all in this together. So if you see something that needs to be said that I missed, jump in. Okay, so there are 8 main Hawaiian islands, 8 mokupuni. Out of these 8, there are 43 traditional moku, okay, 567 ahupua'a. So when legislators saw this, they pretty much went, oh, wait, we don't want to talk to 567 people. That's the reality of today. So we brought back the Ahaki'ole, Ahamoku system, okay. And that basically is best practices. Now you go into the kind of language that policymakers in our state understand. Best practices for natural resources. And you see the mahi'ai and the lawai'a, farmer and the fisherman. Those are the 2 main components that we focused on, but there's so much more than that. You have la'au lapa'au, you have hula, you have astrology, you have every single Hawaiian practice is included in the Ahamoku system. Okay, and as I said, it's generational knowledge, methods that have been proven over thousands and thousands of years. And one of the scientists said, we don't care what you say, it's not science. So I asked him, what is science? According to Webster's dictionary, science is a conclusion based on a long observation. That's Hawaiian science. They can't dispute that. So it integrates. Now what we need to do now though, because contemporary today, we don't have a lot of the resources we used to have in many of the areas. So now we have to integrate traditional methodology into best management practices. Some places we may have to come up with something that is brand new, that our ancestors didn't know. But they were very smart and they adapted to whatever it took to protect the resource.
And I think the main reasons that we focused on the mahi'ai and the lawai'a was because the areas in which we utilized or practiced these, methodologies were being overrun. We're no longer, we weren't able to utilize them because of, various reasons. And so a lot of it had to do with the places that we holo before, and now, now we cannot get couple sites or what have you. Same thing with the farming. Land issues became a big thing for some of the farmers, and so these are the reasons why that the Mahi'a and the Lawai'a was the biggest focus, rather than all of the other components of our cultural practice, like the hula, and all of that.
So as we moved along through the years, we started to stay in really close contact with our legislators, because they were the ones that needed to make the law that would enable us to have the kind of say that we wanted. So the legislature recognized it, and the bill passed to incorporate the Aha Moku system into the state policy, passed unanimously in 4 separate legislative sessions. Now that's really hard to do, to get all the legislators to vote for something. So it passed. In 2007, it became an act. Governor Lingo signed it, it became an act. However, the government never released any funding, ever. So that became problematic, because you had 43 Moku. They needed to have their meetings, they needed to have some kind of infrastructure. The state would not support it. DLNR, I'm just gonna be honest, Laurel Thielen was the DLNR director at the time. No funding was released. It was really, really difficult. They wouldn't let us use any DLNR offices. Our people couldn't get any printing, they couldn't, so rather than stand up and fight it, we just went back to the drawing board and just kept moving along until this past year. Now last year, when it passed in 2011, it passed unanimously again. Governor Abercrombie vetoed the bill, and his reasoning is that he wanted to pick the people that would be on each island, Senate confirmation, and the state wanted some kind of measure of control over the Aha Moku system. Now, a Hawaiian system does not have that kind of measure of control. The people are the ones that control the system. So we worked it out this whole past year. We've worked on it, introduced it again in 2012, and got the governor to support what we finally came up with, and this is what we're going to be showing you. Okay, he signed the bill into law July 9th. It established the Aha Moku Advisory Committee. Now, in order for it to have any kind of teeth, it had to be attached to a state agency. And the governor wanted it attached to OHA. He wanted to put all of it into OHA. And the kupuna said no. This is how wise our kupuna are. DLNR is the only state agency that has the regulatory power to enforce. And OHA does not have that. So for this to be attached to, we needed the teeth. Our people needed the teeth. He finally agreed, and it's attached to DLNR. So the purpose of the act was very simple. We put it into layman terms from our governor, and that was to integrate our cultural practices into the fabric of state policy. Now the legislators really wanted that to happen. And it was to address, and this is in the bill itself, to address the changes to the physical and cultural landscape over the past 200 years, all the damages done to our natural resources, which were responsible for the deterioration of those resources, and our culture. Because kupuna say you cannot separate a Hawaiian from the Aina or from the Kaikat. They're one and the same. So when you see something going up on what used to be a wahipana, say, the hurt there is so deep, you can't, it's destroyed. I'm from Waikiki. My family was from Waikiki from before Captain Cook ever got here. And my father still cries when he sees Waikiki now. And I actually, when I stay here on Oahu to work, I can't leave Waikiki. I'm back in what they call the jungle. To me, it's not the jungle. That sand belongs to my people. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a connection there that nobody can take away. And it's like that for every Hawaiian, wherever they're from. Okay. So, this is the important thing about this committee. The Aha Moku Advisory Committee. And you see the word may? We had shall. The governor changed it to may. I went, okay, it doesn't matter, we still gonna do it. Advise Bill Isla, the Board of Land and Natural Resources Chair, in carrying out the purposes of the Act. Okay, and we'll get to that purposes in a minute. And it shall consist of 8 members appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, this will happen in next session, from a list submitted by the Aha Moku councils of each island. Oversight of the committee shall be by the BLNR chair. So this is directly out of the Act. What he means by oversight, what the Act means by oversight, is just that, look over. He has no actual authority over the committee, none whatsoever. Okay, and the governor is only gonna appoint one time. After this one appointment, how? Then the islands will appoint. But they have to be confirmed by the Senate, and that's only gonna happen this one time, and then pop. So, this is what they have to provide advice on. This is what the islands have to do, submit to the legislature and to BLNR. They have to integrate resource management practices and Western practices in each moku if it's applicable, okay? In many of the places on the neighbor islands, you don't need to do that. Here on Oahu, you're gonna have to do that because a lot of the areas here are gone. And identify a comprehensive set of Native Hawaiian practices for natural resource management. So this is where your empirical and generational knowledge comes into view. This is Puna, Hawaii Island. This is Kaho'olawe. Feihanohano is going to be here, but she had to leave. But this is Pi'ilani's area, Puna. You want to talk a little bit about Puna?
Specifically
On identifying practices.
Oh, okay. For our area, we our ohana still practice kaula'au and ma'ama'al type fishing, and we shared that at the second pufalu. Uncle Kauhi, who was the one who shared at the pufalu, has since passed away. But it is a practice that we are continuing to instill in our families, in our district, in our aina. We are now being more responsible for our resources. We're being more controlling in the people who come and fish or hunt or mahi'ai. We have a lot of newcomers that are coming into, even though the lava came and destroyed Kalapana, a lot of the families who lost their homes have sold their land. So we have outsiders that are not from Kalapana or the areas in which the lava flow had come are now rebuilding. And so they feel that they have the right to go fishing. They have the right to go hunt, like the families who lost their homes and stuff. And so we're trying to educate them. We're not saying no, you cannot, but we're saying if you're gonna do it, this is how you need to do it. This is our practices. And if you cannot, support our efforts to maintain our resources, then we're gonna have to say you cannot. And so, we have still areas in our area that are still going through some, negotiation, especially with, the area known as Kapoho, Kumukahi. We have, a, marine conservation area there, and, it was, done without the consult of the community, the Hawaiian community. It was put together by the, landowners that, purchased the land after the families had lost their land. And so, they put it in, they made it a marine conservation district because they wanted to have a little bit more of a control. But it became a beneficial part for us in Puna too, because then it made us more aware that we needed to be more akamai with how we deal with these different peoples. And now we have a hand in managing the resources. And so within 5 years, we can go back in and renegotiate the marine conservation district.
Of course, we're gonna go try a little faster than that.
Yeah, but that's just one example. And I guess Antigulu had another good example for the Kahana area. Auntie was trying to, she was noticing that the last time you spoke, Auntie, about the jet ski, the recreational versus the people of like, so I go turn them over to Auntie Blue and she can share.
I was just thinking about all the things that were shared, and in our area, we have a lot of our local fishermen that come out in Kahana Bay, and Kahana is so beautiful that we not only draw the fishermen, but we also draw the recreational, water users out there, and so, for many years now, we've been trying to put up and even post signage, about the recreational vehicles coming in, when they use the area, how far out they have to go and stuff like that, and they've been educated many times about staying away from the river, the river going in, where the water becomes from ocean water, when it hits the river, then it turns into brackish water, so we have the river water coming down from Malka. And so we have what they call AA pristine water out there, for fishing. We get nice akure, they go out, they catch a lot of ahi and stuff like that. So we have ahi with aku, and in fact on the 25th we have the popular tournament again that's coming out. So we'll draw a lot of fishermen that want to enter that. But for us, we don't have this kicked into full force right now because we have a lot of the fishermen in our area that are ma'a, but they're used to fishing the way they fish. So, in trying to pull them into Puvalo, we've had several different meetings in our areas, Kahana, Punanu, Ha'ula, to try to draw out the fishermen so they can in fact be educated on this process. That as much as the Moku system will recognize the traditional native practices, in reality, there's laws on the books that are being changing constantly. So, even though our fishermen fight for their traditional rights, a lot of times they get cited by Dokir officers that come under DLNR, and so, some have even gone to court for it. So, this system will not only recognize our traditional fishing practices, but in fact, they'll have more of a voice now, in case they run into any encounter, with Dokir or DLNR. But more importantly is that this Moku system not only is for every Ahua or every Moku, but now we need to kind of carry out what the law calls for, what's in the bill. And it's also recognizing not only the fishermen in our area, but our Mahi'ai farmers, our cow farmers and all of that, because Kahana, we do practice, cattle farming as well. We have two sides of the valley, but then we also need to look at when the kaho is ready, what happens over there too, because when it's ready to pull, the pu'a comes down and wipe out everything, because there's plenty of that too. So in our area, in working on this Moku system, we've had an opportunity also to talk about the likes and the dislikes of our traditional fishermen. Let's say, for instance, the green sea turtles. Now we have an abundance of them, So now they should be looking at legislation to kind of open it up a little bit and start letting our people, start eating the turtles instead of, still putting it on the endangered list, so you can't eat them. So now you see all that action going on down our side, going down Sunset side, because all the tourists now are stopping to go and look at all the turtles. So the traffic is all backed up down that side. And then another one is the monk seals now that are coming over from the northwestern islands. And on the federal level, they're trying to pass, all these rules and changes in the law that has to do with designating our area, the Ko'olauloa area, as the critical habitat for them, so that we can't, so we can't bother this. So, they become on the endangered list too, so, even though we don't have anything against it, and we'll go from one faction to another, my niece will say, hey, the ocean belongs to them, that's their place. And the husband, who's the fisherman, says, no, but they cannot be eating our fishes, they're into our nets, they're into our traps and all that. So, you have conflicting views, sometimes in the same household, because the women will feel a certain way, and the fishermen that are out there feel a certain way, but whichever way, we have to look at how we can really manage our resource and really work it out, so that we might have a balance with our. Another thing is too, we have a lot of traditional fishermen that come, and while we worry about the commercial fishermen out there coming into our mokus and our ampuas, just know that we have our own fishermen that fish in our waters too, that are commercial fishermen as well.
Yeah.
So when you start changing rules and regulations too, like I said, we've got to find some balance, because in the old days, Kahana was also noted for its hukila.
Yeah.
And so many that used to come down at the time when the nets were being laid and going out there, they always partook of what was happening. If they participated, they knew that they could go get their pakini or whatever, and come, and they would get some of the catch.
Yeah.
Today, a lot of fishermen go out there and they catch for them to sell and commercial. So they don't think about who's the kupuna in their area anymore. So if you catch them coming in, you say, hey, how's it, brother? How fishing today? You caught? Oh yeah, will you like some? Oh sure, I take mine. So sometimes for the younger ones, you gotta kind of let them know of your presence, because in the old days, they knew who their kupunas was, and the kupuna would step forward, because kupuna would always come to you and talk to you in Hawaiian, to come hurry up, because now they're gonna lay and we're gonna pull in. And because it's our ampua, you're gonna get one share if you do your part.
Right.
And it's all about teaching your culture, and being involved, because if you're not involved, then you don't get them.
And each place is different,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. Now, Kaho'olawe, I'm just gonna say something. Kaho'olawe is very, very different. No one lives there. It's an island that has ordinances and everybody is fighting to get back into the control of the Hawaiians. What came out of this Aha Moku system is that they knew Kaho'olawe had two moku, okay? The Kona and Ko'olau moku. What the kupuna that came forward said, and these are kupuna who are generationally linked to the island, okay, for many, many generations. There's another moku, Molokini, the little island off of, that's a moku. I said, how can that be a moku? People are living there. And he said, when people gather there and they get the resources and sustenance from the area, that's considered a moku. Then there's another moku, Honua Ula, on Maui. That entire moku on Maui is connected to Kaho'olawe, is considered to be the moku of Kaho'olawe. And the people there always use Kaho'olawe as their gathering and their resource, and it's their ancestors who lived on Kaho'olawe and then were pushed out. So the actual original people of the island live on that whole Moku, Honua'ula, on Maui, and they're still connected. So that kind of knowledge is coming forward. And how it's relevant is that these are the people that know the currents, they know what is out there, they know the fishing, they know the seasons, things that the people of Kaho'olawe, the scientists there, would never ever possibly know, except through the system. This is part of the act, fostering, understanding, practical use of resource expertise. Now, this is KNI in Maui, and this is their lo'i. And the state wanted to sustain its marine, land, cultural, agricultural, and natural resources. They're focusing on agriculture a lot. So this shows the traditional practices of Maui is still going, it's still working. This is Molokai. This is an ancient agricultural place.
Do you mind if I just kind of turn off the lights so we can see?
Yeah, turn it, yeah.
Is that
Is that
okay
okay
for
with you
some?
guys?
Good.
Okay, so this is an original ancient agricultural site in Molokai that through the Moku system, the people there are starting to bring it forward. The problem, why it doesn't thrive, the Molokai is always an arid place, but they have found out that Molokai Ranch cut the water, you see, so the water isn't available. And the water really belongs to the Hawaiian people, so they're taking steps to rectify that and work it out. And they can do that through DLNR now because it's an act. Now they have the power to go and say, we need to have the water back for our people in this area.
Okay. But does that land have to be under DLNR control in order to make that kind of request?
No, it can be, no. This particular piece of land, this is close to La'au Point, I think, yeah. It did have a history of water being there that was interrupted by Molokai Ranch. This is a piece of public property. I mean, this belongs to the state. But now if it's a private land,
Yeah.
then you have PASH and Kapa'akai laws that come into effect. And there's always, you can always talk with the private owner, who normally, private owners now we found in the past 2 years, actually want to preserve if they can, you know. So it's gonna take a lot of talking, a lot of explaining. Okay, community education is another really important concept here. And this came out of that second Puvalo actually.
Yeah.
So the kupuna wanted people to be aware of the cultural awareness on the benefits of the Ahamoku system. And it comes right down to Pai'aina, comes right down to protecting the resources that are here right now. Okay, that's Manele Bay in Lanai. I put that there as an example because the Manele Hotel is right around this corner. And because of that, that bay has been declared off limits for any kind of fishing or gathering. And that was one of the most important places because Lanai doesn't have too many beaches like that, where the Hawaiian people of Lanai would go to fish and gather. That's where they would go. They had 2 fishing quads in there. And then Manele Bay was built, and all of a sudden it's a protected area, and only tourists can go swimming there. Yeah.
I did some of the archaeology that was on there,
On Lanai.
and yes,
Good.
and when we were there, that was before the hotel was built. I mean, they were in process of planning for it. But the conservation area actually existed long before that. And the fishing, I mean, you couldn't fish with net, you could go with pole, you couldn't go with spear. And the community fishing was actually protected even through the conservation.
They were
Yes,
able to.
so there was community fishing through there was a community campground, but the bay was in conservation long before Manila Bay Hotel was built.
I wonder why then. See, what we were told it was because the hotel came into being. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I'll let our kupuna know, the ones who have been telling us that you can no longer fish in there, not even today.
Well, I don't know about today,
Yeah.
but I know that when we,
Back when you folks.
Back when,
yeah, back
yeah.
then when we were
Yeah.
there was still fishing, there was still community fishing. Although they
Okay.
couldn't go out and just lay net anymore, but they did have.
No, I think now, when the hotel came about, because I attended one of the meetings with Antigone from Lanai, and they did say that now, not even the Ohana can go holo. And so I don't know if it's something that came about because of the hotel, or
Or
if
the private,
Murdoch had,
maybe Murdoch.
you know, did something, so they were trying to negotiate again, and that was one of her reasons for wanting to see what the Ahamoku, or how the Ahamoku could come in and help. And for Lanai, the dean, and having Antigone attend the Ahamoku and the Puvalus gave her manao and strength in stopping a lot of the things that were being pushed forward there, especially the fish farms. They were gonna place the
Right.
fish farms right above the ko'a. And so Antigone then, with the support of the Ahamoku system, was able to put a stop to that.
And it was done in a really nice way, you know.
Yeah.
They told the developers, we don't want to stop your economic development, but where you want to put your fish cages is the only fishing ko'a for Opakapaka, which is what the fish cages are going to be breeding, by the way, that would service 3 islands because of the currents out there. And so they agreed to let them have the fish cages, but they would have to move them away from the ko'a. And the developer did not want wherever they picked the other sites. The project folded, so there are no cages out there. Limahuli in Kauai in the Hanalei Coast. This is an example of the Waipa, well, is that Waipa? No, it's Limahuli. They started going back and really restoring their mahi'ai. And I know that these lo'i, these kamo lo'i, actually feed many of the kupuna on that whole Hanalei side of the island. They make point and give it to them, to the families. And that's starting to really take off. And other lo'i, other people are doing that. So they're starting to take care of their people again. And they're using the Moku system as a base to do that. Okay, so that's pretty much the islands. Now the other thing this act does is that we need to submit an annual report in English and Hawaiian to the legislature. The Ahamoku system answers to the legislature and the board chair as an advisory 20 days prior to every session. The interesting thing about this, and this is what the people put in there, is that they need to include whatever recommendations are made by the committee and how did DLNR respond to it? What's the results that came from it? This is to make sure that the people's wishes and what their concerns are do not end up in some dark hole or circular file. The legislators want to know what they're doing.
Some accountability.
Is accountability. There's accountability there. Okay. This is the actual system. People ask, well, how does it work? You know, do these 8 Moku Puni representatives, the fear is that they're going to make decisions like other commissions without their people knowing. It doesn't work that way. The ahupua'a is on the top here. The people of the community of that ahupua'a need to get together and decide what they want in their resource. And that's gonna be more difficult for Oahu than for other islands. You know, it will be. But that's what the process is. Now, when the ahupua'a meet, when the people in that ahupua'a meet, they select one person to represent them in that ahupua'a. And this is the key thing. That person that they select has to have generational knowledge. And I'll tell you why. A couple of years ago, this guy comes up to me and he says, I'm a Hawaiian practitioner. Okay, his accent was so thick I couldn't even understand because he was from Boston or New York or someplace. He's a Hawaiian because he lives in Hawaii. He's a practitioner because he fishes with a pole. So he's practicing fishing. So Kupuna went, okay, we can't have that. This is meant for traditional practitioners methodology, traditional methodology. So you need to have generational knowledge. You have to have knowledge passed down of that one area. When all those people get together, that's when they get together, they form the aha ahupua'a. And that form, they pick one person to represent their moku, okay? There's 6 moku here in Oahu. So you'll have 6 moku representatives. And now you cannot become that unless you're a practitioner already with generational knowledge from the ahupua'a. Those 6 people get together and select from among themselves the moku representative for the island. So that's how you get to be one of those guys. Your people select you. Excuse me. Now, this is what their power is. They are the liaison between government agencies, developers, whoever, between them and their people. Okay, I'll give you a graphic example. The acting Moku representative is Mr. Charles Kapua. He is from Eva, yeah, the Eva Moku. You're from the Eva Moku, yeah. Okay, so say somebody comes up, some developer comes up, and they want to build a huge billion-dollar resort in Kahana Bay. And they can't do it unless they get the people's permission. What he would do is he would immediately contact, Ululani. She's the Moku representative for Ko'olaloa. Okay, not Kahana Bay. Say they want to do it in Hauula. Okay, she is from Kahana. She would immediately contact the Ahupua'a representative of Punaluu. That representative would call his community together and tell them this is what's going on. Ulu would then put them in touch with the developer or whoever, who then works directly with the people. The people decide, do they want it, do they not want it? Are there pros, are there cons? But it's their voice. Permits cannot be processed unless the people decide that's something they can live with. And when it gets up to, now that's how it's supposed to work, right? Okay, say the developer doesn't want to listen, he goes through ILA, he goes through all kinds of other, Act 288 makes sure that the people have the voice on what they want. That's the power of this bill.
I can also add another scenario that just happened, and it doesn't just have to do with hotels or anything, but on our island, like all the other islands, we deal with our kohala or our marine life washing on our shores. You know, their carcass ends up on our shores. So the people from NOAA will contact, in the past they would just they wouldn't even contact anybody. They would just go take care of the carcass, dispose of it, keep the EV, whatever. But since the Aha Moku came about, they would contact me because I'm the Kiole representative for my island. And they would tell me, the whale washed up in Ninole, Ka'u. I would call Auntie Liz Kuluvaimaka and Auntie Darlene Vieira, and I would tell them, Auntie, can you folks go down and meet the scientists? There's a whale that just got washed up, and they're gonna go down there, they're gonna take studies, they're gonna do the research. Can you make sure that they give you folks the report, so you can go back into your community and tell the people that the whale had disease, and to block off the area so that nobody go holo holo until the disease is determined if it's harmful for the human consumption or if it's okay for them to, just so that nobody go fishing in the area, eat the fish, they too get sick. And then the second thing is we have Lua practitioners that want to utilize the EV of these whales, or we have hula practitioners that want to use the niho, the teeth of the whales, for their lei adornments. So we have people who trace their genealogies back to the Ali'i line, so they want to make their own lei niho flower. Yeah, so, but these are practitioners from all the other moku. What do we do? Yeah, they want the EV too. So for me, I always tell them, please, wait, Ho'omanawanui, we're gonna find out what the ohana, the community of Ninole, wanna do with this carcass, what they wanna do with the EV, and if they wanna share the EV with the outside organizations. And it's worked so far, it's been such a blessing, because now we don't have the ohana fighting against each other, or the various organizations bucking heads. No, hey, that EV, I get, that's my alma kua, that's my kupuna, So we've eliminated that process. Nobody else gets notified until that the Ninole, or the people where the marine life came on shore, and then, so they go back, they talk to the people say, okay, we want Noah to take the, carcass off the beach. Noah will come in with the helicopter, take the carcass off, they'll dispose of it, and then the EV will be returned to the people.
So there's all different scenarios.
Yeah, every moku is different.
And we're all
And-
still learning as we go.
And and that's the beauty of this ahamoku system, that it's not one law, and it doesn't apply to everybody in the same that has the same situation.
It's very fluid.
Yeah, everybody's island is different, and the process and the way that the people want to deal with it is different.
Right.
And so that's what allows us to.
It's the only law now that we know of that has that kind of flexibility, and it's because it's a Native Hawaiian cultural thing. So this tells you the relationship between people and the legislature and DLNR and how it works. As I said before, on that side, you see the Ahupua'a going down to the Aha Moku Advisory Committee, and that's the power structure of this system. Now, the advisory committee, through the people, advises the Board of Land and Natural Resources, okay, this way. And then they also advise the legislature. The chair of the Board of Land and Natural Resources sends down all of that mana'o and concerns and requests, whatever it is, to all of their different divisions and to their commissions. And this is important because the Water Commission controls the water in the state of Hawaii. Our Moku people have to have a say in how that water is used. And through this bill we do. State parks is another area. Hunting, cultural practices, our hula people, all of that comes in there. Now, here's the important one. Shipta. Our EV is included in that. And the mana'o that we're giving DLNR so far, which will come out probably in this report coming up in December, is they're having so many problems on the burial councils, and that's because people are making decisions for the iwi that's maha'oi, that's not their family, that's not their ahupua'a, that's not their moku. now, through the Moku councils, hopefully, you can start to alleviate some of those issues.
How do they establish generational?
Generational knowledge. Generational knowledge is knowledge of how to care for the resource management handed down by kupuna to kupuna. Pi'ilani is an example of generational knowledge because her grandmother, Auntie Minnie, is one of the most respected practitioners on the whole island, you know. I mean, well respected by every single Moku. Auntie Minnie decided that Pi'ilani was going to be the recipient of that knowledge. We all know that. But young as she is, there's a lot of respect there because we know that's where the knowledge came from. And
But
so,
also, it's not, you know, we have a lot of Hanai too, you know, in the traditional Hawaiian practice, we love it Hanai, we take on. And so, that's why we, you know, it's not really tied to native blood too.
right,
Because sometimes we Hanai somebody that is not Hawaiian blood, but they were given that knowledge. You know, that's like Uncle Les Kuloloyo, Hanai one, you know, Holly Boy off the beach, but then he would raise them for a really time. And then boy, even though he knew what a coco, he get the Ike.
I'll give you an
And
example of that.
so, you know,
But what if it's not so clear?
Well, you know Kepa Mali?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a good example. He's Poi Holly in his blood. But, God, he is so respected for his knowledge because he's a recipient, right, of that Kupuna knowledge.
yeah.
That's
So, you know, you, and it's just practices that you do within your family.
yeah,
You know, and that's generational, you know, your own family has something that no other family practices, you know, and that's generational knowledge. And so your mana'o, your input for the place in which you live is really valuable.
So can you self-certify?
That sounds like what's, right?
Yeah, you know, you're the only person that knows your Ike. You know, I cannot come and tell you, you gotta prove to me that you know your Ike, yeah, your knowledge.
Well, the other thing too is, what you gotta remember, people move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their families move.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just because they're not living in that more
right,
does not mean that they do not
Have,
have ties
yeah.
to them.
right,
Yeah.
And so when a meeting is called, normally the right thing to do is you notify everybody. Because those people who have that knowledge can come and share
right.
that knowledge. And that's what we're trying to
Establish,
encourage
yeah.
Encourage,
the old, the
Yeah.
kupuna, or their children even, that has been passed the generational knowledge,
Yeah.
to come and share that.
It's very,
And especially when it's time to make decisions, you know, within your community. You don't have to be living within the community, but, you know, say, you know, you live there, you know, you come from Kalapana, but now you live in Oahu. You know, I can still call you and go, hey, we have a meeting that's gonna be taking place and they like build a big hotel. If you cannot be in present, can you please give your testimony or
right,
your mana'o suggestion via email? We have technology now, or,
right,
you know, record it, give us a recording statement, and then, you know, that way, as the kiole, I can say, oh, I talked to, you know, Auntie, and this is Auntie's mana'o, and I share with so-and-so, and everybody's input together
right.
will, you know,
Then you
bring
make the
much.
decision, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So you don't have to prove your generational knowledge, but everybody in the community will know if you're lying.
yeah,
No,
yeah, see, I mean, you know, it's a,
Yeah,
Spirit-
everybody,
spiritual
everybody will know that you're not from, you know.
you're not from here.
Whatever, you know, that kind of a thing. They'll come out and say, so.
The other thing that's important in this is a code of conduct. A code of conduct is important because each Moku, the kupuna said they're concerned with how people plant fish and gather or whatever they do rather than how much they take. It's a protocol, community protocol. And this is really looked at because you get people from another island. I mean, everybody gotta make a living, but they'll come over with boats and coolers to neighbor islands that are pretty much protected with an Ahupua'a system, and they'll just rape them. So how do you address that? You need to have a protocol, a community protocol. And the traditional behavior is that people focus on nature. You consult nature. You know, it's a balance. It's a holistic thing. So, and all of the different disciplines have all agreed that it's a minimum disruption of a natural, biological, and ecological process. So you disturb as little as possible. You pick as only enough to make sure it's going to continue. You know, so you don't just kill the whole thing.
The problem that we're having right now, though, is the migration of other people.
Other cultures.
coming to Hawaii.
Yeah.
The Micronesians, the Samoans, the
Right.
the Filipinos. They're used to doing what they did, what is correct for their culture, where they came from. And then they come here and try to practice that because in respect to them, they don't know the difference. And in Hawaii, we do things differently.
She's being kind. She's being diplomatic. She's being kind.
So what we
And-
did was we told the DLNR and like in the phone book. Yeah, you look at your phone book. In the front of your phone book, it gives you all the rules of when you have a disaster or there's a crisis. Who do you call and what do you do? So we suggested through all of this manalo that we have all been working on for many years, put the traditions of Hawaii in the phone book.
Yeah.
Because they don't teach them when they become a citizen, a United States
Yeah.
citizen of the state of Hawaii, what our laws and our culture is. They don't share that, really. They don't share our cultural knowledge that we have to take care of our land and our ocean resources. So why not put it there so that they can read about it? The second thing, and that's why I became a kupuna in the classroom, now that I'm retired from the federal government, is to teach the children. Because if you teach these children that have migrated to Hawaii with their families, and you teach them from K through 6 about the correct ways throughout our state of Hawaii in the educational system, they're going to home teach their families. And they do. Well, you know, Kupuna said this. Or, you know, the correct way to cut the limu is don't take your knife, take your scissors. Because when you go back next month, the limu's still going to be there. You're not going to scrape them off the rock. You know, those kinds of things and how to take care of the land. And from Mauka to Makai, when you go hiking, you take your little rubbish, your bag, put it in your belt, and you pick up the trash as you go. All those kinds of things is what now can be taught in the educational system to correct what is being done now by our people that are migrating here.
These are two
South
quick,
Kuleana.
and that's right. That's a big part of it. This is Makua Valley, Wahine, Santa Ruby's area over there. And this code of conduct is actually being taught to the military because they have their live fire and they're practicing in Makua Valley. What they didn't realize is people are still gathering through the streams and into the ocean. And then this is Ni'ihau, and this is an example of how they practice themselves. Ni'ihau is really interesting because they have only two moku. They have Kona and Ko'olau. And so they have a system where they only gather so much on one side during season, and then they go to the other side, because that's their ice box. So I'm gonna go a little quick because I know we're late now. The other important thing is that each of the moku has seasonal calendars that will teach them when to plant, when to fish, when to practice. I know in Ka'u they even have calendars that tell you when married couples can be together, that kind of stuff. That's how calendars can be so different, so intense. And we're familiar with the Prince Kuio Hawaiian Civic Club moon calendar. That one works for Oahu, but in Ka'u it's a little bit off, you know, in Hawaii Island. Each island has their own lunar calendar and how to do all of these things. Okay, that was it. So, thank you. If you have any questions, I know we're running a little late on this, but otherwise, I would really, really like to thank Pete and Lenny, and Moku Okeawe, and Ti Ulu from Kahana, from Oahu, Ruby, Wahine.
Concentration, I'm not a fisherman, but I love fish, to support, you know, this whole effort, but to go put the knowledge or laws into the DOE curriculum.
Right.
Well, Nanakuli, it's zero. Even when Hokulea came out there, and it was a historical thing, school would not allow the keiki to
You know,
come out and it's.
part of it was, I think, is because we didn't have this depth of authority. When this act was signed, now we can go to the Department of Education. And now we can, you know, it's still gonna take some time. Not all the
Right, yeah.
agencies are gonna just latch on. This is a threat to them, actually. They're kind of nervous about it.
But
you know.
Ewan, I think that it's a good idea that Auntie Ruby brings this up,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now that it is a law,
Yeah.
you know, we start from basics, you know, because, you know, we always kind of be on the tail end, you know, anything
No,
before it's
yeah.
always kind of on the
And
tail.
then
So why don't we
what you
kind of
can-
upfront on this?
Yeah.
That's a good way of educating
And then
the
what we
young
can
ones.
do is we can have a meeting, for our educators. You know, like bring the teachers in and then, share with them about the act and what, you know, what they can do. Because there are a lot of teachers that wanna do that, but then sometimes they gotta deal with the po'okumu there, you know, the principal. And then the principal gotta hit, you know, superintendent. So gotta go through the chain of command, and so sometimes we need to educate the superintendent who will go, hey, I think this is a great idea, and then go into, you know, talk to the principals and say, you need to put this into your curriculum.
Yeah.
And stay close to your legislators.
Yeah, maybe one last comment, you know, in Kahana, we've been doing this a number of years now, where we ask by DOE, the Woodward District, for all the new teachers coming on board. So every year, like this year, we have 65 new teachers, maximum 70. And so by the time the staff and come into school, partnerships with them, we receive them in Kahana, we take care of them, and we do culture kinds of things. This would be a really nice add-on. Kind of late right now for add-on one new one, but you know, we could certainly think about it the next time they come, you know, and make the new teachers aware that we have these kind of things that are in place, you know.
Now,
for,
pretty soon, DLNR is, once the governor finalizes this, within the next 2 weeks, actually, is what I've been told, then a website, an Ahamoku website will be added to DLNR's website. And that way people can, then we can really start getting the word
Right.
out and all
And then we
that.
also, you know, for our Moku, we wanted, the suggestion was public announcements.
Yes.
You know, and there's already television spotlight on resource management, fishing, you know, you see it on TV, where the person goes and then they see all the opala. We can toss in the Ahamoku concept of you know,
Traditional.
managing your resources as well.
And this is for everybody in the state.
Yes, it's not because you're white.
No.
Yeah.
It's everybody's kuleana.
It's
now
everybody's
here,
kuleana.
Yeah.
No matter who they are.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
teach them.
And the other thing too, from, you know, and I only speak for my island, cause I cannot speak for the other islands, but, I've had, people who moved here and like Auntie said, migrated, whatever you wanna call it. And now they're living here in Hawaii, or they've come from the mainland, and their children are born here in Hawaii. So their thinking is that because their child is born here, their child is Hawaiian, even though they don't have Hawaiian blood. For example, if I was to move to California, I gave birth to my child in California, my child is a Californian. even though my child is not of an ethnic, whatever. you know,
Barack
that-
Obama.
Yeah, so, but anyway, their mana'o is, you know, my child deserves or, is supposed to, you know,
There
because
is the right.
yeah, my child has the right, cause he's Hawaiian, because he was born here in Hawaii, even though he never Moku. So, you know,
We
we
gotta
have those arguments there, you know, and, you know, how we clarify that is that you need to have Hawaiian blood, you know, to, you know, participate in, you know, some of the activities, but, you know.
And we're not gonna be able
yeah.
to solve that
Yeah,
until
Definitely.
we as a people are recognized in our
That's
space.
That's right.
Once we do
Seriously,
that, then
yeah.
we have that. Because when we go to the Philippines and give birth, that child is not Filipino, we know. You know, when we go to Korea and give birth, that child is not Korean. You know, same thing like Hawaiian, so, but we're not even a recognized people. So that's why they claim anybody born in Hawaii is Hawaiian,
yes.
because this is a place called Hawaii.
Hawaii, yeah. So same thing, like you go to
So
the
we have-
mainland, so it's a Western
work.
concept, yeah. So,
But we're coming along, we're getting there.
yes,
Thank you
yes.
all so
Thank
very,
you.
very
Mahalo